The heat wave was unbearable, the air heavy with the threat of a storm, when my phone vibrated on my desk, breaking the silence. It wasn't the distant rumble of thunder that triggered it. It was the motion sensor in my storm shelter, concealed under a patch of artificial grass in my backyard. I opened the live feed, and there she was, Margaret, the HOA's self-proclaimed queen, flashlight in hand, bolt cutters swinging from her wrist, standing wide-eyed in my shelter like she'd uncovered a hidden vault. Before I could grasp the ridiculousness, the shelter's door slammed shut with a mechanical whir, biometric locks snapping into place. 3 feet underground, with a thunderstorm closing in, Margaret was trapped. I let out a stunned chuckle. Margaret, who'd spent months hounding me over neighborhood standards, had broken into my federally funded storm shelter. Now, her own arrogance had locked her in, panicking as the skies roared. For a fleeting, delicious moment, I considered grabbing a soda and watching the drama unfold. The tension had been building for months, ever since I installed the shelter. Margaret bombarded me with HOA citations, calling it an eyesore despite its hidden design. As an aerospace engineer, I'd secured every permit, even federal disaster grants, making the shelter a government-grade fortress. But Margaret didn't care about facts, she craved control. If she hadn't approved it, it was a violation in her eyes. That morning, I'd been at a cafe in Riverside, working remotely, when my security app pinged, showing Margaret and her 2 minions, Tom and Ellen, snooping around my yard. I texted neighbors about the Margaret patrol, assuming it was another of her petty inspections. I never dreamed she'd escalate to breaking and entering. Her first mistake was thinking cheap bolt cutters could crack a hatch built to withstand F5 tornadoes. She didn't know the shelter's tamper-proof system would unlock the door for 30 seconds, then seal it tight until reset from inside. It was designed for survival, not nosy intruders. Now, Margaret was learning that lesson the hard way. Inside, her smug victory turned to dread. She'd planned to snap photos of unauthorized construction for the HOA's lawyer, but the shelter wasn't some crude bunker. It was a high-tech marvel. LED lights, stocked shelves, automated systems. Her flashlight swung wildly as she realized the truth. The door's locks clicked shut, unyielding. She yanked, pushed, even kicked it with her sandal-clad foot. Nothing. Her shouts for Tom and Ellen, who'd stayed outside the fence, were useless. On my phone, her panic was pure theater, banging on the hatch, ranting about civil rights and HOA authority. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. I drove home slowly, stopping for a soda, letting her stew in the consequences of her entitlement. Storm clouds thickened, rain spitting as thunder growled. This was going to be epic. Pulling into my driveway in Willow Creek, I spotted Tom and Ellen under an umbrella across the street, looking like kids caught sneaking candy. They waved weakly. I ignored them, heading to the control panel disguised as a shed. Margaret's voice blared through the speaker. "This is unlawful imprisonment. Release me now." I leaned into the mic, calm as ice. "You're trespassing in a federally protected facility. Stay calm. Authorities are notified." Her scream could have shattered glass. I hadn't called the cops yet, but the lie was worth it for her reaction. As storm sirens wailed, I dialed the Sheridan County Sheriff's Office, reporting a break-in to a federal disaster site. The dispatcher's tone sharpened, promising deputies and a federal investigator. This wasn't an HOA squabble, it was government business. Inside the shelter, Margaret unraveled. She'd gone from threats to begging, now pacing in circles, ignoring the water rations and oxygen systems around her. Her flashlight lay abandoned, her hands clawing at the walls. Outside, rain lashed the street, neighbors gawking from porches, phones out. Word spread fast. Margaret was in deep trouble. Tom and Ellen whispered frantically, avoiding my gaze. I caught their eyes, raising an eyebrow. They looked away, drenched and guilty. 15 minutes later, 2 sheriff's SUVs rolled up, lights cutting through the gloom. I handed the lead deputy, a gruff man named Thompson, a packet, permits, footage, grant papers. He skimmed it, nodding. "She broke into your federal shelter during a storm warning and got locked in?" I shrugged, hiding a grin. "That's about it." He whistled, pulling up the live feed. Margaret's voice screeched about expired water and calling the governor. Thompson shook his head. "This one's a piece of work." The deputies tried calming her via the speaker. "Sheriff's Department, stay calm, we're getting you out." Margaret's hysteria peaked, yelling about conspiracies and her civic duty. The crowd snickered. Thompson opted to override the lock, a process I'd designed for emergencies, not idiots. The hatch creaked open, and Margaret stumbled out, soaked, her live, laugh, love shirt clinging pathetically. She launched into a tirade, pointing at me, but Thompson stepped in. "Ma'am, you're under investigation for trespassing, tampering with emergency infrastructure, and false reports." "Hands where I can see them." Her face collapsed, cartoonish shock replacing fury. Cuffed and silenced, she was led to the patrol car, her sandals squelching. I caught Tom and Ellen trying to slip away and called out, "Plenty of room in the shelter if you want a tour." Neighbors laughed, lightning flashing for emphasis. The storm hit hard, rain turning lawns to mud. Margaret, in the patrol car, glared through the window, mouthing threats drowned by the downpour. It was poetic, nature reveling in her downfall. Neighbors whispered, phones capturing every moment. This wasn't about mailbox colors. Margaret had crossed a federal line. A tornado touched down 15 miles away in Clinton, adding ironic weight to her crisis, while a real one loomed. Thompson pulled me aside, saying FEMA and state officials would investigate, needing my footage and records. I nodded, my documentation airtight. Mrs. Harper, an elderly HOA critic, marched up, declaring she'd overheard Margaret plotting to frame me. The deputies took her statement. Tom and Ellen squirmed as they were questioned, claiming ignorance, but their silence screamed guilt. A black SUV with FEMA plates arrived, agents inspecting the shelter with clinical precision. The lead, a sharp woman named Agent Carter, confirmed tampering was a federal crime due to the shelter's grant funding. "Next time someone complains, tell them it's the safest place in town," she quipped. I laughed, the storm easing to a drizzle. Margaret's charges piled up: trespassing, tampering, obstruction. The neighborhood buzzed the next morning, texts and news alerts flooding my phone. Headlines screamed about the Willow Creek storm shelter bandit. Cars slowed by my house, neighbors waving or gawking. For once, I wasn't the villain. The HOA unraveled fast. Tom and Ellen emailed the community, disowning Margaret's rogue actions, but their emergency meeting was a bloodbath. I attended, armed with a folder of Margaret's emails, fines, and group chat posts. The Oakwood Community Center was packed, tension electric. Tom stammered apologies, but residents erupted, demanding answers for years of abuse. I laid out the shelter's legality, sharing evidence of Margaret's harassment. Gasps filled the room as her words, bragging about targeting homeowners, sank in. The crowd turned, voting to oust the board. Applause followed me back to my seat, a quiet victory for a community choked by fear. Margaret's house went dark, a for sale sign slapped up. Her legal woes mounted. Federal charges, no plea deal in sight. Her lawyer's scowl became a local meme. The neighborhood bloomed, gardens sprouted, block parties sparked without HOA mandates. A barbecue became a celebration of freedom, kids racing, neighbors bonding. They unveiled a polished sign for my property. Unauthorized entry may result in a complimentary lock-in. Enjoy your stay. A cartoon tornado chased Margaret's scowl. I laughed, helping mount it by the shelter, a symbol of triumph. Margaret's lawsuit against the HOA flopped, her house sold at a loss. She faded, her name a joke in Willow Creek. I joined an advisory committee, ensuring no new tyrant rose. One evening, watching the sunset, I felt the weight lift. It wasn't about the shelter or Margaret. It was about freedom to live without petty control. The stars shone brighter, the community stronger, all because one woman's ego led her into a trap she couldn't escape. I smiled, knowing my shelter stood ready, a guardian of peace in a town reborn.